I've asked you 4 times, Ryan. Why are you avoiding me? The question cut through the air like a sharp blade, catching Ryan off guard. His heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Marissa to confront him. Not like this, not so suddenly. He froze, standing in the doorway of the conference room, trying to find his words. Her piercing gaze met his. She wasn't backing down. This wasn't the usual corporate banter. There was no humor in her voice, no room for deflection. She needed an answer. Before we dive into the story, I need to know something. Have you ever avoided someone because you were scared of what might happen if you let them in? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever been in a situation where everything changed in an instant, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this goes. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Ryan's eyes darted to the door behind him, the hallway bustling with employees and noise. He couldn't escape. Not now. Marissa, I'm not. He paused, his throat tightening. I'm not avoiding you. The words felt hollow, like a half-truth he hadn't even convinced himself of. He'd been avoiding her for weeks now, dodging every chance to interact. Every time their paths crossed in the hallway or the elevator, he found an excuse to slip away. She didn't buy it. Really? Because it sure looks like it. Every time I try to talk to you, you're too busy. Or in a meeting, she said, her voice calm but edged with frustration. I've been running this company for the past few months, on my own, and you've been ghosting me. Why, Ryan? What's really going on? Ryan's pulse quickened. He had been running from her, from everything. His responsibilities, his emotions, and now even the truth. He wasn't just avoiding Marissa. He was avoiding the real reason he couldn't be around her. And it terrified him. I don't know what you mean, Ryan muttered, taking a step back toward the door. But as he moved, his back hit the cold glass of the conference room window. There was nowhere to go. Marissa's eyes softened, just a little. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the floor with each deliberate step. I don't believe that, Ryan. I've known you long enough to know when you're hiding something. Ryan sucked in a breath, his mind racing. He couldn't keep running from her. Not forever. Not when everything was starting to come to a head. He clenched his fists at his sides, his thoughts spiraling. He had to tell her. Or at least, he had to admit it to himself. I'm not avoiding you because of work, he said, the words heavy in his chest. I'm avoiding you because I'm afraid of what will happen if I get close. Marissa didn't speak at first. She waited, her eyes studying him. Ryan's heart beat faster as the confession poured out. I'm a single dad. I don't have time for distractions. I don't have time for anything else but taking care of my daughter. He shifted uncomfortably. If I get involved with you, if I let myself care about you, I'll lose control of everything. And I can't afford that. Marissa's face was unreadable for a long moment. Then, she exhaled slowly, her gaze not leaving his. What happens if you never take that risk? Her voice was steady, calm. But the question lingered in the air, more dangerous than any accusation she could have thrown. The meeting room was cold. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. Ryan stared at the table in front of him, the bright overhead lights casting sharp shadows across the surface. Every time he tried to look up, his eyes were drawn to Marissa across the table, sitting so calmly, so composed. It was like she was always in control, and here he was, barely holding it together. She'd asked the question, and now it was time to deal with the aftermath. But instead of the usual fire he had expected in his stomach, there was just a gnawing emptiness. He'd let the words spill out without realizing what it might cost. The silence between them was heavy, pressing down on him. It had been nearly an hour since their brief exchange in the hallway, but the sting of her gaze lingered. He could still hear her words, could still feel them vibrating in his chest. What happens if you never take that risk? For the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't sure of the answer. Marissa hadn't said anything else after he admitted the truth. She hadn't challenged him. She'd simply stood there, her eyes softening, but she hadn't moved closer. She hadn't even reached out. There was a distance between them now, an unspoken boundary, like a fragile line he wasn't sure how to cross. He glanced up at her again. She was looking at her notes, but her focus wasn't entirely on the papers. It was like she was watching him out of the corner of her eye, waiting for him to break the silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "Ryan, why didn't you tell me any of this before?" The question hit him harder than he expected. His stomach twisted. "I wasn't ready," he said, his voice strained. "I've spent my whole life hiding behind work. I thought if I buried myself in it, I wouldn't have to face the parts of me that I'm not proud of." Her gaze didn't falter. "What parts are you hiding, Ryan?" He hesitated, his thoughts spinning. He could feel the walls he'd carefully built around himself starting to crumble, piece by piece. But part of him still wasn't ready to expose the whole truth. "My daughter, she's everything to me," Ryan said quietly. "I'm not just her father. I'm everything. I can't afford to be distracted. If I get close to anyone, it's not just my world that will fall apart. It's hers." He swallowed hard, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. Marissa leaned forward slightly, her expression soft but filled with something else now, empathy. She didn't look at him like he was weak, like others did when they realized he had limits. No, her gaze was filled with understanding, like she saw right through his defenses. "You think that if you let someone in, you'll lose control of everything you've worked for," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan nodded, unable to say anything more. It was the truth, after all. He had built everything for his daughter, but somewhere along the way he'd forgotten to live. Forgotten what it felt like to trust someone again. "You're not alone in this, Ryan," Marissa added. "I don't know what's holding you back from me, but we can figure it out. Together." Her words hung in the air, and for a second, Ryan wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that he didn't have to carry this burden by himself. But a part of him, maybe the bigger part, was terrified of what that might mean. What if she got too close? What if she discovered that he was just a man doing his best to keep his head above water, trying to juggle it all and failing at times? Before he could respond, Marissa stood up, her chair scraping across the floor. The movement felt final, like she was ready to leave him with his thoughts, to give him space to figure this out. But then she paused. She turned toward him, her voice softer now. "I know this won't be easy, but I'm here, Ryan. I won't leave you to do this alone." He felt the weight of her words in his chest, and for the first time in a long time, he wanted to lean into that promise. But he didn't know how. I don't know if I can just open up like that." His voice cracked. He hated that it cracked. But there it was, the truth, raw and exposed. "I've spent so long building these walls. I don't know how to tear them down." Marissa's lips curved into a small, understanding smile. "No one expects you to do it all at once. But you have to start somewhere. And I'm not going anywhere." Ryan felt a strange sense of warmth spread through him, even as doubt tried to creep in. Could he really let her in? Could he take that leap of faith? Marissa stepped toward the door. "Think about it, Ryan. But don't think too long. Sometimes the biggest mistake is waiting for the right moment to act. By the time you find it, it might be too late." With that, she walked out of the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the quiet hum of the office in the background. As the door clicked shut behind her, Ryan sat there, staring at the space she had occupied just moments ago. Was he ready to risk everything? Or would he let fear rule his life and walk away from something that might change everything? Ryan sat at his desk, staring at the numbers on the screen. But his mind wasn't on the budget forecasts or the upcoming meetings. His mind was on her. He hadn't expected Marissa's words to haunt him the way they did. "I'm not going anywhere." The promise echoed in his head, soft but persistent. It was the kind of thing you wanted to believe, the kind of thing that should have felt reassuring. But for Ryan, it felt like a weight, like a burden he wasn't ready to carry. The clock ticked on, the minutes dragging by. He could hear the buzz of conversations from the hallway outside, the low murmur of voices in the break room. Everything was normal, yet nothing felt normal. He had tried to bury it all. His fears, his responsibilities, his past. But now, with Marissa's offer hanging in the air, He couldn't ignore it anymore. He was trapped between two worlds. The world he had built for his daughter, where everything was neat, predictable, and under control, and the world with Marissa, where everything was messy, raw, and full of unknowns. She was right, he thought. He'd been avoiding her. But not just because of his work. Not just because of the pressure. He was avoiding the idea of having to let someone into his life again. Into his real life. The knock on the door broke his thoughts. Ryan. Marissa's voice was soft, but it still made his stomach drop. He didn't look up immediately. Instead, he just sat there, fingers frozen on the keyboard. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, and he could feel it widening with every passing second. She entered the room slowly, like she didn't want to intrude, but she was determined to speak. "Can we talk?" Ryan cleared his throat and finally turned toward her. His stomach twisted again at the sight of her. She wasn't just the CEO anymore. She wasn't just the boss. She was someone he was afraid of. Someone who might see him for who he really was. He couldn't let that happen. "Sure," he said, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. He didn't mean to sound distant. He didn't mean to push her away. But there it was. Marissa's expression faltered, but she didn't flinch. She stepped inside the room and closed the door behind her, crossing her arms over her chest. The walls were closing in on him. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she began, "and I'm still not sure why you're shutting me out, Ryan. I know you've got a lot on your plate with your daughter, with everything going on, but this," she motioned between them, "this is real. This is something worth fighting for. Why are you running from it?" Her words hit harder than he expected. They cut straight to the core of everything he'd been feeling. But the answer wouldn't come. He couldn't say it. Couldn't tell her that he was scared. Scared of loving again. Scared of opening up. Scared of losing. Because if he lost again, it would shatter him. And this time, he didn't know if he'd be able to pick up the pieces. "You don't get it," Ryan said, finally standing up from his chair. "I can't risk everything, Marissa. My daughter, she needs me. I can't afford to put my heart out there and have it get trampled again." The words left him before he even realized what he was saying. They were harsh, like a slap in the face. But they were the truth. And in that moment, the truth felt like a weapon. Marissa's eyes didn't leave his. But she didn't look angry. She looked sad. And for a second, Ryan almost wished she would be angry. He could deal with anger. But the sadness? It was harder to face. "You think I don't understand fear?" she asked quietly. "That I haven't been afraid of losing everything, too?" Ryan froze. She wasn't supposed to understand. She was supposed to be the confident, successful CEO. The person who had everything together. The person who never questioned herself. But here she was, standing in front of him with her own vulnerability showing through. "I'm not some untouchable person, Ryan," she continued. "I've built this empire on my own, but that doesn't mean I don't get scared. I've learned that sometimes the only way to keep what matters is to let people in. And right now, I want to be in your life. But I'm not going to fight you for it." Her voice trembled slightly at the end, and Ryan saw the crack in her armor. For a moment, he saw Marissa for who she truly was. Just a woman, with the same fears and doubts he carried. But that only made everything harder. "I'm not ready, Marissa," he said, almost pleading with her. "I can't let you in." She took a step back, her expression tightening. "I can't keep chasing you if you're never going to let me in. And I'm not going to waste my time on someone who's too afraid to take a chance." Her words were final, but it didn't make them any easier to hear. Marissa turned, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she walked toward the door. Ryan watched her go, his chest heavy. She was right. He was afraid. He was so afraid of what might happen if he let her in, and he didn't know if he could face it. The door clicked shut behind her. And for the first time, Ryan felt a sense of loss, not just because of Marissa walking away, but because he was afraid of something he might never get back. He stood there in the quiet room, his mind swirling. Had he just lost her? Was his fear going to be the thing that destroyed everything he'd been building with her? Or was there still time to change his mind? Ryan sat at his desk, staring at his phone. It buzzed again. A message from Marissa. I know you need space, but we need to talk. Don't avoid me. He sighed and dropped the phone onto his desk, leaning back in his chair. He'd tried to move past it, tried to keep his walls up, to keep his emotions under lock and key. But Marissa had somehow slipped through them, even if just a little. And now there was no ignoring it anymore. The situation was getting complicated. He couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. And yet, every time he thought about taking a step forward, fear choked him. I can't keep doing this, he muttered to himself. The office was quiet, the hum of the air conditioner the only noise. Ryan looked out the window of his high-rise building. The view of the bustling city below should have been comforting, but today it only reminded him of the life he was holding on to for dear life. His daughter, his job, and his desire to keep it all together. He couldn't afford to let anything fall apart. But the thing was, things were falling apart, and he was running out of ways to fix it. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Ryan! He turned to find Marissa standing there, her arms crossed, her posture a mixture of patience and uncertainty. She was no longer just his CEO. She was someone who had crossed into a space that made him feel vulnerable, exposed. She knew things about him now, things he had never wanted anyone to see. You wanted space, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. But I'm not sure what's left for us to figure out if we don't face this head-on. Ryan didn't respond. He didn't know how. What was there to say? He had already admitted his fears. He had already told her how much was at stake. And still, she was here in his space pushing for something more. Something he wasn't sure he could give. Can we sit? She asked, a small gesture to the empty chair across from his desk. He nodded slowly, even though the idea of sitting with her made his stomach churn. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a decision, a choice, and Ryan wasn't sure he was ready for it. Marissa sat down, crossing her legs, her gaze locked on his. You're still avoiding me, but now it's different. You know that, right? Ryan rubbed his hands over his face, trying to shake off the weight of it all. He couldn't explain why he was avoiding her. He couldn't even explain it to himself. The pull between them was undeniable, but the fear was so much stronger. You're not ready, she said quietly, almost as if reading his mind. And I understand that, Ryan. But we're at a point now where you can't keep shutting me out and pretending everything's fine. You have to let me in or let me go. Her words felt like a slap, but they were the truth. And deep down, Ryan knew it. He had been running, trying to keep everything under control. But the more he tried, the more it slipped through his fingers. The tension between them had grown too strong, and he could feel it in every word, every glance, every quiet moment they shared. Marissa's eyes softened as she watched him struggle. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm just asking you to let me be here, to let me help, if that's something you want. But I can't do this alone. Ryan sat in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. He wanted to let her in. He really did. But there was a part of him, the part that had always been in control, the part that was used to standing alone, that couldn't fathom opening up to anyone again. Not after everything he'd already lost. But he also knew that if he kept running, he would lose everything. His chance with her, the possibility of something more, of a life beyond just surviving. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why do you care? Marissa's eyes softened even more. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her voice calm and steady. Because I believe in what we could have, Ryan. I've always believed in this, in us. But I can't keep fighting for something that you're not willing to fight for. Ryan's chest tightened. He could feel the walls inside him starting to crack. He wanted to push her away, to tell her it wasn't worth it, that he couldn't handle it. But something inside him kept telling him not to. Marissa stood up slowly, but this time she didn't leave. She walked over to his window and looked out at the city, her back to him. For a moment, there was only silence between them, and Ryan could feel the tension building in the air, thick and heavy. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, she said finally, her voice soft but firm. I'm just asking you to stop pretending like this isn't real. Stop pretending like you don't feel something. Ryan opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. She was right. He did feel something. He'd felt it from the moment he first saw her. But he couldn't bring himself to admit it. Not yet. Marissa turned to face him, a sad smile on her face. I'm going to give you some time, but I can't keep waiting forever. I got my own life to live, Ryan. And I'm not going to wait for you to figure this out. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking sharply on the floor with each step. Before she reached the door, she stopped and looked back at him one last time. If you want this, Ryan, you're going to have to take a step toward me. Because I can't keep chasing you. With that, she left. And Ryan was alone again. As the door clicked shut, Ryan sat there in the silence, his thoughts swirling. Could he really take the step she was asking of him? Or would he let fear win again? The office was empty when Ryan arrived the next morning. The silence hung in the air, heavier than usual. He had arrived early, as always, but this time, something was different. He was waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he was ready to hear. The clock ticked steadily, each second drawing him closer to the inevitable conversation with Marissa. After their last exchange, he couldn't just let things be. The walls inside him that had held everything in, his fears, his doubts, his past, had started to crack. And now, with every tick of the clock, it felt like they were falling apart. His mind kept replaying the moment when she'd left his office. I'm not going to wait forever, Ryan. Those words kept echoing in his head, making him feel both guilty and desperate. He didn't want to lose her, but every time he thought about opening up, about taking a chance, his fear stopped him. What if it wasn't enough? What if it hurt more than he could handle? What if I lose control? That was his biggest fear, wasn't it? Losing control of his life, his daughter's life, his job. Everything he had worked so hard for. But maybe Marissa was worth the risk. His phone buzzed on the desk in front of him. A text from her. We need to talk. I'm coming by in 30 minutes. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to face her. He had to face what he was running from. He took a deep breath and stood up, pacing the small office. His palms were sweaty, his mind racing with all the things he wanted to say. But what could he say? Could he really tell her everything? Could he admit that he was scared? That he was terrified of losing himself in something he didn't think he could handle? The door creaked open, and there she was, Marissa, stepping into the room like she belonged there, like she had always been a part of his life, even when he had tried to keep her out. Ryan couldn't bring himself to look her in the eye. He was still processing everything. The way she had left his office, the words she'd spoken. He wasn't sure what to do next. Marissa stood in front of him, her expression unreadable. Ryan, she said softly, are you ready to talk now? He nodded, though it felt like his throat had closed up. I don't know what to say, he admitted. She studied him for a moment, her gaze softening. You don't have to say anything right now, but you can't keep avoiding this. We can't keep pretending like we don't feel something. It's tearing you apart, and I can see it. The words cut deeper than he expected. He wanted to tell her that he wasn't ready, that he couldn't do this. But something in her voice, the way she spoke with quiet strength and certainty, made him want to listen. You've been running from me for weeks now, Marissa continued, her voice low. And I get it. You're scared. But you can't keep living like this. You can't keep shutting me out because of what might happen. What if you're missing something? Something real? Ryan swallowed hard, trying to push the lump in his throat away. The fear was back again, louder than ever. What if this didn't work? What if opening up ruined everything? But then he thought about his daughter. The way she looked up to him. The way he had spent so many years trying to protect her from the world, thinking that keeping everything together was enough. He had never let anyone close. Not like this. I'm not asking you to change your whole life for me, Ryan, Marissa said, her voice softer now. I'm asking you to let me in, to let someone else share the load with you. You don't have to carry it all alone. Ryan felt something shift inside him, something small but undeniable. It was like a crack in the wall, and through it he saw the possibility of something more, something better. But even as the shift happened, doubt crept in again. He couldn't just dive in, couldn't risk it. He had a daughter to think about. He had responsibilities. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, his voice thick. "I've spent so long keeping things together. I don't know how to just let go." Marissa's eyes softened. "I'm not asking you to let go of everything, Ryan. I'm asking you to stop pretending like you can handle it all alone. That's not fair to you, to her, or to me." The words stung, and Ryan felt the weight of them like a ton of bricks. "This isn't just about you anymore, Ryan." For the first time, it wasn't about his work. It wasn't about his daughter. It was about him, about what he was willing to risk. And he had to decide whether or not he was willing to risk it all. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with uncertainty. The decision wasn't easy, and Ryan could feel the pull of his old habits. But somewhere deep inside, he knew that if he didn't make a change, if he didn't take that step, he would always wonder what might have been. Marissa's voice brought him back to the present. "I'm not going to pressure you, Ryan, but I can't keep pretending like this isn't real. We have to face it, together, or we walk away." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He didn't know what to say. All he knew was that he had to make a choice, and he had to make it soon. But as Marissa turned to leave, Ryan's heart hammered in his chest. Was he really going to let her walk out of his life? Or could he find the courage to do the one thing he had always feared? Let her in? Ryan sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. The screen was dark, but the thoughts swirling in his mind were bright and loud, too loud. He'd barely slept the night before, too caught up in his own head. The words from his conversation with Marissa were replaying, each one sharper than the last. "We have to face this, together, or we walk away." He couldn't shake the weight of it. The way she had walked out, leaving him with his own fears and insecurities. The pressure was mounting, and he could feel it pushing against him, like a dam that was about to break. He ran his fingers over the coffee mug in front of him, the steam rising, but it didn't warm him. His daughter, Emily, came into the kitchen, her small voice breaking through the silence. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her big eyes watching him closely. Ryan's heart twisted at the sight of her. She didn't deserve to see him like this. She didn't deserve to see him so lost. He forced a smile, the kind he had perfected over the years. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm fine. Just thinking." She didn't seem convinced, but she let it go, climbing into the chair beside him and taking a bite of her cereal. Ryan took a deep breath and tried to push the weight of everything away, but the guilt only grew heavier. Why couldn't he just be enough? Why couldn't he do both? Be the father Emily needed and the man Marissa wanted. He was so afraid of failing, of letting down the people he cared about. And right now, it felt like he was failing at everything. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Marissa. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." Ryan stared at the text. Talk. He had been avoiding this conversation for so long, but now it seemed like there was no way out. The walls around him were collapsing, and he couldn't hide behind them anymore. He glanced at Emily, who was now happily absorbed in her cereal. She was so innocent, so unaware of the storm inside him. Ryan had spent so many years protecting her from the world. But now, he wasn't sure he could even protect himself. "Daddy!" Emily's voice interrupted his thoughts. "What's for dinner?" He forced himself to focus. "I'll make your favorite," he said, trying to push the thoughts of Marissa out of his mind. Emily smiled and nodded, but there was a shadow in her gaze. She knew something was off. He could feel it. She always knew when he wasn't being honest. The sound of his phone buzzing again made him jump. This time, it wasn't just a message from Marissa. It was a call. He didn't even look at the screen. He knew who it was. But before he could stop himself, he answered. "Ryan." Marissa's voice came through, calm but firm. "We need to talk. I'm outside." His heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything he had been avoiding. Was he really ready for this? Was he ready to finally face the thing that terrified him most? Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. He ran a hand through his hair and glanced at Emily, who was still sitting at the table, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. "I'll be right back, sweetheart," he said, his voice softer now. He didn't know if she heard him, but he left the kitchen quickly, stepping out into the cold, crisp air of the morning. Marissa was standing by her car when he stepped outside, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at him, the silence between them thick and heavy. Ryan swallowed hard. He couldn't avoid it anymore. "I'm sorry," he said, the words coming out before he could think twice. "I don't know what I've been doing, or why I've been pushing you away." His voice cracked, the weight of everything he'd been holding back flooding to the surface. Marissa didn't flinch. She just stood there watching him closely. "It's okay, Ryan," she said quietly. "But you can't keep doing this. You can't keep pretending like you don't want this." The pain in her voice was there, subtle but undeniable, and it hit him harder than he had expected. He had hurt her. He had pushed her away without even realizing how much it was costing them both. "I do want this," Ryan admitted, his heart pounding in his chest. "But I'm scared, Marissa. I'm scared of losing everything. I'm scared of letting someone else in and watching them walk away like everyone else has." Marissa's expression softened, but she didn't step forward. She didn't try to close the distance between them. Instead, she simply let him speak, waiting for him to finish. "And I'm scared of failing you, failing her." Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "I can't lose either of you. I can't do it." The air between them seemed to freeze, the weight of his confession hanging in the stillness. He felt exposed, like every part of him that he had tried to protect had been laid bare. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Ryan," Marissa said softly. "I'm not asking for everything. I'm just asking you to let me in, to stop shutting me out, because we can't do this unless you let me in. We can't do this unless you stop running." Her words landed like a punch to his chest, and for the first time, he realized that he was the one standing in the way of everything he wanted. Ryan took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. The fear hadn't gone away, but something in him was starting to shift. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to let go of the fear and embrace what might be. Marissa's eyes held his, waiting. Ryan's heart raced as he stood there, torn between the comfort of his fear and the uncertainty of what might come next. Could he really take the risk? Or would he push her away again and lose everything? Ryan sat in his car, parked outside Marissa's apartment building. He hadn't planned to come here today, but the moment he left his office, he knew he had no other choice. He had to face her, he had to stop running. The sky was overcast, the heavy clouds mirroring the storm in his chest. He had spent hours thinking about her words, replaying the conversation over and over. "We can't do this unless you let me in." But what if he couldn't? What if letting her in meant losing everything he had built for himself and Emily? What if he couldn't protect them both? The weight of the decision felt like a ton of bricks pressing down on his shoulders. His fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel. He didn't have a clear answer. All he knew was that staying in this place of indecision was hurting more than actually making a choice. And today he needed to make one. Ryan glanced at his phone, noticing the messages from Marissa that had popped up over the past few hours. "Ryan, I need you to meet me. Please. I'm waiting for you. Please don't shut me out again." The words cut through him. Marissa wasn't asking for perfection. She wasn't even asking for everything. She was just asking him to be real, to stop pretending like he could carry the weight of his past, his fears, his guilt all by himself. And yet, the fear still gripped him. The fear of failing. The fear of not being enough. But if he didn't show up now, would he ever be able to? Would he ever have the courage to be the man she believed he could be? "She believes in me," he thought, his chest tightening. But what if she's wrong? He reached for the door handle but froze as his daughter's face flashed in his mind. Emily, his sweet girl. He was doing this for her, wasn't he? He was doing it to give her something better than he had. to make sure she didn't have to grow up with the same scars that he did. She deserved better than his fears. And so did Marissa. With a heavy sigh, he stepped out of the car, locking it behind him. His footsteps echoed on the pavement as he made his way up to her building. The walk seemed longer than usual, each step a reminder of the distance he had put between them. But as he reached the door, the distance felt real. He rang the buzzer and waited, his heart pounding in his ears. Seconds felt like hours. The door clicked, and Marissa appeared on the other side, her face illuminated by the soft light of the hallway. "Ryan," she said, her voice quiet but steady. There was no anger in her eyes, no frustration, just a calm that made the nervous energy in his chest feel even heavier. He didn't say anything at first. He simply stepped inside. The apartment was warm, the kind of warmth that reminded him of a home he didn't quite know how to reach. It was different from his apartment, more lived in, more comfortable. A space that reflected the person Marissa was. A person who wasn't afraid of letting people close. And Ryan knew, deep down, that if he didn't let her in, if he kept his walls up, he would lose her. He had spent his entire life afraid of losing control, of losing everything. But the truth was, he had already been losing things, bits of himself, bits of his future, and now, possibly, her. She closed the door behind him and stood there, waiting for him to speak. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for pushing you away. I've been scared. Scared of losing everything I've built. Scared of losing you." Marissa didn't move, but her eyes softened, the corners of her lips curling into the faintest smile. "Ryan, I never wanted to tear your world apart. I just want to be a part of it. I want to help, not take anything away from you." He nodded, his throat tightening. "I've spent so much time trying to protect myself, trying to keep everything perfect. I didn't realize it was making me push people away. I didn't realize that by doing that, I was losing the chance to actually live." Her eyes never left his. "No one can do it alone. You don't have to be perfect, Ryan. I'm not asking you to be. I just want to be with you. To walk beside you through the hard parts, the messy parts. That's what it means to be a team." A team. He had been so focused on doing everything by himself, on being the man who could carry the weight of the world, that he hadn't realized that the true strength came from sharing the load. From letting someone else in. "I don't know how to do this," Ryan whispered, his voice raw. "I don't know how to let go of all this fear." "You don't have to let go all at once," Marissa said gently. "You take it one step at a time, and I'll be right here, every step of the way." Ryan's chest ached, but the ache felt different now. It didn't feel like the weight of his fears. Felt like the beginning of something new. Marissa stepped closer, her hand reaching out. "Ryan, I know it's scary, but you don't have to be afraid anymore. Not with me. Not with us." The truth hit him like a wave. She wasn't asking for everything. She wasn't even asking for all of him. She was just asking for a chance. A chance to be more than the walls he had built around himself. A chance to be the man he knew he could be. A chance to have something real. "I don't want to lose you," Ryan said, his voice breaking. "I don't want to keep running." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ryan felt a weight lifting. The fear was still there, but it was no longer the thing controlling him. He had a choice now. A real chance at something that wasn't just about surviving. It was about living. But just as the words left his lips, the realization hit him hard. Choosing to love meant giving up control, and that terrified him more than anything. Could he really take that step? Or would his fear still hold him back, just one step away from everything he wanted? Ryan stood in the middle of Marissa's apartment, the air between them thick with unspoken words. He hadn't meant for things to spiral the way they had. For so long, he had been running from everything. His past, his fears, his own need for connection. But now, standing in front of Marissa, something inside him felt different. The knots in his chest had loosened. He could see, for the first time, the truth of what she had been telling him all along. That love wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about hiding from the things that scared him. It was about being willing to share the messy, broken parts of himself. To let someone else in. "I'm here," Marissa said softly, breaking the silence. "I'm here, Ryan. And I'm not going anywhere." The sincerity in her voice made his heart ache. He had been so caught up in his own doubts, in trying to control everything, that he hadn't realized how much he had been pushing her away. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't even close. But for the first time, he realized that maybe, just maybe, that was okay. "I don't know what to say," Ryan admitted, his voice raw with emotion. "I've spent so much of my life trying to protect myself, trying to protect Emily, trying to make everything look like it's okay. I never stopped to think about what I needed. What we needed." Marissa stepped closer, her hand reaching out to him. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. We'll figure it out together." The words were simple, but they hit him like a wave. He didn't need to have it all figured out. He just needed to be willing to try, to let go of the fear that had been holding him back. For the first time in years, Ryan felt a warmth spread through him. The kind of warmth that came from being seen, from being understood, from knowing that someone wasn't just willing to walk away the moment things got hard. "I don't know how to stop being afraid," Ryan murmured, looking into her eyes. "I don't know how to just let go of everything I've been holding on to for so long." Marissa smiled gently. "You don't have to let go of it all, Ryan. You just have to let me in. Let me help carry it with you." Her words cut through him. He had spent so much of his life thinking that he had to do it all on his own, that asking for help would make him weak. But now, in this moment, with Marissa standing there, he realized how wrong he had been. He didn't have to do this alone. "I've been so afraid of losing control," he confessed, his voice trembling. "But what I didn't realize is that I've already lost control. By pushing you away, by holding back, I've been losing everything I really want." Marissa stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. He felt the connection in that simple touch, so real, so raw. "You don't have to be perfect, Ryan. You just have to be." He took a deep breath, the weight in his chest lightening just a little. Maybe this was what he had been missing all along. Being. Not trying to control every outcome. Not trying to protect everyone else, but just being present in the moment. "I want this," Ryan said quietly, looking down at their joined hands. "I want us. I want to stop running." Marissa's smile was everything he needed to see in that moment. No words, just the look in her eyes that told him she had been waiting for this, waiting for him to come to terms with his fears, to stop hiding. They stood there in silence for a few moments, just holding hands. The weight of everything had shifted, but there was still so much to talk about, to figure out. Still so much healing to be done. But for the first time, Ryan felt like it could be okay. As the seconds ticked by, Ryan felt a lightness fill him. He had made the choice. He had taken the risk. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. "Emily's going to love you," Ryan said, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. Marissa nodded, her gaze softening. "I hope so. But I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to be a part of your life. All of it." Ryan smiled, his heart full. "That's all I need." They spent the next few hours talking, sorting through everything that had happened, everything they had held back. It wasn't easy, but it was real. It was messy, but it was theirs. Later that evening, when Ryan returned home, he found Emily sitting on the couch, her small face lit up by the soft glow of the TV. She glanced up as he walked through the door, and the moment their eyes met, Ryan felt a lump form in his throat. "Hey, sweetie," he said softly, walking over to her. "Hi, Daddy." She smiled, though her eyes were still curious. "Where did you go?" Ryan knelt beside her, his heart full. "I had to talk to someone very important." Emily's eyes twinkled. "Who?" Ryan paused, taking a deep breath. He had always known that his life was about to change, but now he knew it would be for the better. "Her name is Marissa," he said quietly. "And she's a part of our life now. She's going to be part of our family." Emily stared at him for a long moment, her face unreadable. And then, as if deciding something in her own little mind, she simply nodded. "Okay," she said softly, and Ryan's heart swelled. Maybe this wasn't going to be easy. Maybe it would take time to figure things out. But right now, in this moment, he knew he had made the right choice. As Ryan sat beside his daughter, his heart light with the certainty of his decision, he realized something. The journey wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The beginning of a life where love wasn't about perfection. It was about being real, together. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.